why are so many more kids these days being diagnosed with ADD and other problems involving impulse control, oppositionality, and so on? It's really very simple. It's because in our culture, over the last several decades, the parenting environment has become so unbearably stressed for a lot of people. It's not that parents are worse parents. It's not that we love our kids any less. It's not that we're less devoted. We're a lot more stressed. Why are we a lot more stressed? And by the way, let me say that no genetic explanation can possibly account for the burgeoning and preponderance of all these disorders, because the genes in a population don't change over 10 years or 20 years or even 100 or 200 or 300 years. It would take many, many hundreds of years, longer even, for the genetic drift of sufficient proportions to occur that would explain why so many more kids are being diagnosed. And the other argument that we're just better at diagnosing it, it doesn't wash. Any teacher will tell you they have a lot more troubled kids than they used to a few decades ago. Well, why? Because the parenting environment was never meant to be the isolated nuclear family with both parents having to work from the child's early age on, and let alone the 40% divorce rate. That was never the parenting environment nature designed. Children used to be parented in the attachment village, as the African saying goes. It takes the village to raise a child. There was the extended family, the clan, the tribe, the village, the community, the neighborhood. The parents did not have to be perfect because there was a lot of other parents in the child's life, older, wiser, calmer, who also provided the parenting, who supported the parents, and who had relationships with the child. In the last half a century or somewhat more, those community ties, those extended family connections, the neighborhood, they've all been torn asunder because of economic and social changes. And again, two parents have to now make a living by working. That means they often don't see the child the whole day from very early age on. No wonder then. And when they come home, they're stressed, they're multitasking, their own minds are all over the place. No wonder we're seeing so many more kids, so many more children with attention deficit and other related disorders. So it's not a parental failure we're talking about here. We're talking about a society that stresses its members, and particularly the child rearing unit. We mustn't make the mistake of thinking that biology equals genetics. A lot of things happen to the human body that are biological, but they're not determined by genetics. What is genetic is the potential, but it's up to the environment to see whether that potential is fulfilled or not. Now, is there nothing genetic about ADD? Well, I think there probably is. I think what's genetic here is a high degree of sensitivity. Sensitivity means, from the Latin sensire, to feel, the degree to which you're affected by what happens in the environment. So a physical hypersensitivity is an allergy. You overreact really to a minor physical stimulus like pollen entering your lungs. You go into an asthmatic episode, or you get a rash. That means you're hypersensitive. Incidentally, kids with ADD tend to have more physical hypersensitivities as well. They're just more sensitive, I think, probably by nature. And that means that whatever stresses occur to them will have a much greater impact than would happen to a child who's more placid, more stolid, and less sensitive by temperament. Here's the good news. The good news is that unlike with vision, in these circuits of the brain, new development can take place even later on in life, in fact, even in adults. So the question that we're asking is not simply how do we treat, quote-unquote, a disease, how do we regulate certain behavior patterns, but really, how do we promote the development of the child? And that's a very different question, because often what we do to achieve short-term behavior regulation flies contrary and undermines the goal of long-term development. And I'll say more about that in a while as well. It also means that we have to, in dealing with the ADD child, we have to look at not just the child individually as if he or she had the problem, but the child's environment, which actually is a much more optimistic, because we can do much more about a child's environment very often than we can about directly pressuring a child to be different than the way they are. And I'm going to read you the epigraph to the book, the quote that I've used for this book, and also to introduce another book that I helped to write, and it's by the spiritual teacher Krishnamurti, Jadu Krishnamurti. And Krishnamurti said, action is meaning only in relationship, and without understanding relationship, action on any level will only breed conflict. The understanding of relationship is infinitely more important than the search for any plan of action. So in looking at what to do with and about the ADD child, we need to remember that. The understanding of relationship is infinitely more important than the search for any plan of action. If we get the relationship right with these kids, the actions will follow. So it's not a matter of what to do, it's how to understand the child. And not just how to understand the child, but how to perceive the child's relationship with the world. Now that means, for example, it is well known that stress makes people hyperactive. You take anybody, ADD or not, and you stress them tremendously, they'll have trouble sitting still. So the environment has a major impact on a child's level of disorganization, mental and physical. Before we do anything with the child, we need to look at the environment. Now, a psychotherapist once said to me, in relation to my own parenting, that children swim in their parents' unconscious like fish in the sea. When the parents are stressed, so is the child. Recall that these kids are highly sensitive. That means that they sense the stresses, the pressures in the environment. When I counsel parents with ADD kids, the first thing I talk to them is about the parental relationship with one another, the atmosphere in the family home, how much calmness is there in the home, quite apart from what difficulties the child himself may create. So, because these children are like the canary in the mine, they'll act out whatever stresses there are in the environment. They'll often get stomach aches when there's stress in the family. Often kids with these repeated stomach aches that nobody can find the answers for, the answer is really clear. It has to do with stress in the family that the child can't articulate, cannot consciously identify, but is manifesting through his body, or through his hyperactivity, or through his inattentiveness. So that's the first thing, is to recognize that for these children, we have to create a calm and organized, nurturing environment in which the parents really do have to look at the stresses that they've unwittingly perhaps taken on in life. It's much easier to change a person's environmental conditions than it is to try to force them to be different than the way they are. And this is where relationship comes in. So the healing of ADD, the helping the child develop out of ADD, or helping them to cope with it more creatively and more positively, depends on the nurturing environment. And here's where I'll read the quote, which is the epigraph to this book. It's by the spiritual teacher Jadu Krishnamurti, who said in his book on relationship, action is meaning only in relationship, and without understanding relationship, action on any level will only breed conflict. The understanding of relationship is infinitely more important than the search for any plan of action. The understanding of relationship is infinitely more important than the search for any plan of action. And again, without understanding relationship, action on any level will only breed conflict. Now, these children, as I've said, are highly sensitive. And that means that they intuit, they feel, without being able to articulate the stresses in the family. How they do express the stresses in the family is through emotional upsets, through hyperactivity, and often through physical symptoms. I've seen many of these kids with recurrent abdominal pains that have been to specialists and nobody could say what the pain was all about. It was really quite clear that what the child's pain in the abdomen was all about were gut feelings related to stress in the family. They're like the canary in the mine phenomena. They're the ones who feel most acutely the stresses that the parents may not even be aware of. And that means that in dealing with ADD kids and understanding their inherent and probably inherited sensitivity, if we are to help them, we really have to help families. We have to talk to the parents, or if you're a parent, you have to really look at your own life, your relationship with your spouse, how much stress you've taken on, perhaps unwittingly, how much calm time you really have in your life to devote to this child, and with what emotional pressures you're burdened by that this child might be picking up on. Because the first thing is to clear that space as best you can out of those stresses. Without that, we're in no position to help the child.